Hello, everybody, and welcome to a conversation on tourism, not during the peak part of the year, but in the accommodations world in the time of year where those bookings are made. And that traditionally is somewhere in that January, February, March timeframe, a little counterintuitive. So we're fortunate to be joined in this conversation today by two pros in the industry who will help us unpack early indicators in what remains one of our most important economic drivers, not only across the state, but particularly in our region. Tameron Kugler, Alex Perry, together you have more than 20 years experience in the regional destination management and marketing world. We're joining you today on this wintry day in January in the Currituck County Visitors Center, one of your wonderful offices. We are curious. We don't want to talk more than we listen today. As we begin to assess the demand for the northern Outer Banks, and I appreciate some of your efforts there to differentiate the Outer Banks for our visitors, as we assess demand post-COVID, post-pandemic for the northern Outer Banks, we have some thoughts around our best leading indicators, but we are more curious as to your own. Tameron, you're the director, and Alex, I know you'll chime in with some specific data and specific data sources to help us interpret the market. Some of this will be data, some of it will be your intuition. That's enough of a long-winded introduction by me. Tameron, what's your data saying, but what's your intuition saying? And the other way to say that is, how should we think about what kind of year 2025 is going to be?
Well, let me kind of start historically from COVID. COVID saw, of course, put the whole industry into a panic. We were fortunate that we were able to open up the bridge and allow visitors in to what could have been an absolutely disastrous summer. After 2020, 2021, and 2022, it just went through the roof. We saw visitation in unprecedented numbers, visitation that we'll probably never see again unless we have another, hopefully not, COVID type event. But we knew at some point the market was going to correct. We were going to normalize because we were in a perfect position. We were an outdoor destination. We were a drive-to market. People felt comfortable going to their own home and not a hotel, so they felt protected. They were out on the beach. So we were perfectly poised to grab all those visitors who couldn't go to overseas destinations or urban areas. So that was wonderful for us, but we also knew at some point the world would open back up again, which it did. And we started seeing in 2023 a decrease in visitation, a little bit more in 2024. Not horribly bad, but we did see a normalization in the market. And I think the whole tourism industry knew that that was going to occur. The urban areas, of course, were waiting for it to occur because that was going to lift them up. In 2024, we had a good season, but we did see some decreases. In terms of occupancy tax, we were up by a little over 2%, but basically running in place. Right now, I see occupancy tax collections were about 1% over last year at this time of year.
That's encouraging.
It's encouraging, but we're not in the heavy, we just started the heavy booking season, so hopefully we'll see some of those numbers rise. Mm-hmm. But I think kind of we're running in place. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of our business partners and a lot of our vacation rental managers are looking at 2019 as kind of a benchmark year, because that was the last year that we saw normal growth. Mm-hmm. And our normal growth patterns have been around 3 to 5%. So I looked at an average of, let's say I'm going to grow us 3.5% every year, starting from 2019. So every year I grew us by 3.5% in occupancy tax. And we're still, based on the numbers of where we would be if we were on that normal growth pattern, we're still way above.
That's fascinating.
Where we would normally be. I think it was about a little over 5%. We're still ahead, or more than that, of where we would be with a normal growth rate.
Wow.
So we're doing well in that respect. Also, I think we are starting to see new repeat visitors, if that makes sense. Our data shows us that about 20% of everyone that we see out on the beach every year has been there 20 years or more.
Which is a dumbfounding number when I stop and
Yeah.
think about that for a moment.
It's brand loyalty that you can't buy. It's Procter & Gamble, it's Nike brand loyalty, it's just brand loyalty. But because of the COVID epidemic, and we saw a lot of new visitors coming to our area that had never thought about us before. And I think a lot of those visitors are now becoming repeat visitors, because I've been hearing from the industry that a lot of these new repeat visitors are booking along the same patterns as our long-time repeat visitors.
So you feel like our customer avatar, our customer profile has been consistent pre-pandemic, through the pandemic, and now post-pandemic.
And now post-pandemic, with some of the new people who have come to experience us. Let's say they didn't go to Myrtle Beach. They decided to come to Kerala. And of course, they fell in love with Kerala because we're such a unique destination and who we appeal to. Families, pristine beaches, uncrowded, all those wonderful history. You know, especially those people who love history. You come to Currituck County, you come to Kerala, you come to the mainland, and you can't help but be hit in the face with our history, dating back from the 1600s. I mean, we've been here that long. The Northeast of North Carolina is one of the first places that was settled in our country. So we have that magnificent history. So we are seeing some decreases. Not huge, but we are seeing some decreases. And to that end, I think we have talked about sharing information. For example, sharing with Twiddy and our other vacation rental managers. What are we doing out there in the advertising world? Because if you know what we're doing in the advertising world, you can amplify in certain markets. And that's what we really want to explore right now at this moment is what markets are still coming on strong for you? What markets are historically strong for you that aren't? So where can we pinpoint some of these data points so that we can pivot some of the marketing that we're doing to bolster our vacation rental partners' marketing efforts? And vice versa.
And vice versa.
And maybe,
Alex,
maybe before we get into even what we can do differently, I can explain a little bit about what we're currently doing.
Well, let me give you a situation. You come in the morning, you have a cup of coffee, you probably look at some regional, national headlines, and then you probably look at a report or a data stream. What's your favorite data? Where is it coming from? And you look at that because of why?
So we look at a couple things. One is our website traffic. That's a good indication of how we're doing. The other two things that we look at which would be our conversions, which would be the visitor guide downloads or visitor guide requests. We look at that. We also look at newsletter subscriptions, emails all our visitors will get.
You're looking at an open rate? You're looking at a time on the email?
Clicks.
Click-through rate?
Yes, sir. And we try to increase our leads every year to grow those newsletters. So looking at those three factors, and again, visitor guide downloads and e-newsletter subscriptions are two of the biggest ones. You also have sources of data in the market overall as a destination manager, tools like something called key data. Has that been valuable to you in terms of a leading indicator for what you suspect the future might be, even though it might be too early for the data to support a conclusion?
I get those reports weekly. There are some KPIs or key performance indicators that I particularly look at, and that's revenue. So I usually look at 3 years of revenue.
Trailing 3 years.
That to me is very valuable. ADR and RevPAR.
ADR is an average daily rate, and RevPAR, revenue per available room, which helps cut through and normalize a lot of different market offerings and stays of duration. It normalizes those things.
Right.
Okay, those are very important to you.
Very important. Also, I look at paid occupancy.
Paid occupancy.
I can get the numbers for paid and owner occupancy, but I like to look at paid occupancy.
Okay.
So that to me is kind of an indicator of where we are. It also lets me know how much, it also does correlate with how much inventory is off the market because owners are occupying. So there is some correlation between that. And interestingly enough, now we can look at revenue not only in Corova and Corolla, but also the mainland.
Yep.
Because we're starting to see a lot of vacation rental rent by owner.
Yep, we've heard
on
that.
the mainland.
We've heard that.
And I'm seeing that just in terms of revenue. So if I look
That's
at
wonderful.
2019 as opposed to this past year, we went from 300,000 in occupancy to over almost 700,000.
This is on the mainland.
This is on
so
the
more than
mainland.
doubled pre-pandemic.
Yes. Yeah, so we're starting to see that growth in that market. So that's an interesting data
Okay.
point for me. But yeah, I'm looking at revenue, and also, Alex and I are always seeing in terms of revenue, we always see the bump at Easter. You can always see the Easter bump. So interesting enough, this Easter is a little bit ahead of last Easter. So, and a lot of that depends too upon the time of year because we're having a late Easter this year. So we look at that. I mean, right now we're still in the middle of booking. You're still booking summer, so you're not really seeing a clear curve on that. But those are the things that I find are important.
Okay.
And if we see something really dipping, we're
Okay.
going to be calling you
Okay.
and our other partners.
What's your billboard say? You've got a billboard in Lower Currituck for the tourism community right now. What's it say?
Yeah, so we're actually working on all of our new branding on all of our billboards. The new campaign we're using is "We're in the OBX, only in the Northern Outer Banks." And part of that is we're just trying to carve out our section of the Outer Banks. When people are looking to come down to the Outer Banks, they're not looking specifically at Nags Head, Kitty Hawk, Corolla. They're looking at it as a whole. They may not be familiar with those other areas. And so this really tells people we are a part of the Outer Banks. We're just the northernmost part of it.
Okay.
And that includes Corolla, includes Corova and the 4x4 beaches, the mainland, and Knott's Island.
So let me build on what we're discussing today. Let me give you a bit of a tough question. So often when we think about growth, we think about what is existing and then also new capacity or new value we've been able to create. The retail analogy, same store sales versus new store sales. When you assess growth in Currituck County, do we think that is same store sales increasing their overall sales? So for example, a vacation rental home, an Airbnb, being occupied more for longer periods of time and thereby increasing a dollar amount, or new offerings in the market? My guess is a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Do you see one trend or another stand out to you? That's a tough question, I know it. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, I think for us, we're looking at it as, you mentioned key data earlier. So when we look at key data and we're looking at trends or where people are coming from, it gives us all the booking data. So we look at the states they're coming from, we're looking at the zip codes they're coming from, and then we take that information and that's who we're advertising to.
So
So
we're
it really
echoing.
doesn't matter if they're new or they're old. We're trying echoing. That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And we also, from that data, I mean, we're not only just advertising to the top 7 or top 10. We also are
Zip codes.
We're looking at zip codes, but we're also looking at, are there emerging markets?
I love that conversation.
Because we have to look at that because
I love that.
we saw Maryland like 3 years ago. All of a sudden, they're on our radar and they really weren't before. Now Maryland's become one of our top 7.
I'm sorry, when you say top 7, you mean top 7 originating
destinations
that come to the Outer Banks.
Yes.
Okay, thank you
Not
for
some,
clarifying that.
we can drill down into zip codes, which we do, but
Okay.
just from a state standpoint, New York was the same. We started seeing New York starting to come on strong back in 2018. 18-ish.
Okay.
And before that, it hadn't been on our radar. West Virginia is another one that we're watching closely, and Tennessee.
Yes.
They're not quite, in our top 10 yet, but we see them incrementally creeping up in terms of visitation. So that is one thing that we're monitoring, because we do all of our traditional target market states, but we also look at experimental marketing in some of those areas.
Okay.
And to Tameron's point, when you're looking at those top 7 states, we're focused on them because that's mainly 75% of our bookings are coming from those states.
That's
And
that
this-
same store, new store sales.
Yep.
That's really interesting. 75% from that traditional top 7.
Roughly, yes, sir.
Roughly.
And then we break it down farther into those zip codes. Now, that's who we're targeting originally with our digital ads, TV, radio. But once they come to the website, no matter who comes to our website, we're going to retarget ads no matter where they're coming from.
Okay.
So,
Tameron, just for a fun data point, and correct me if I'm wrong, I often am, you mentioned to me one time that the average Currituck visitor shops at Tractor Supply.
They do.
In terms of knowing our customer, do we know who our customer is with that kind of specificity?
We do, and that comes
do.
from our destination marketing research.
Okay.
And that really, and our last one was in 2022.
Okay.
Chandler Thinks does that for us. They've been with us since 2018 and refreshing the data, and they actually are our rebrander for our
Perfect.
new name. So they're very
Okay.
well acquainted with who we are.
Perfect.
And for example, the Tractor Supply customer
Yep.
is very much in our demographic.
Okay.
They usually tend to have a higher household income. We like to think of them as our gentleman farmers.
Yep.
So they're hobbyists,
Yep.
but they want to have the latest and greatest out there
Okay.
that they can get. And they just generally have a little bit more to spend. So they might be suburbanites, they might be actually rural, but it's the demographic that we're looking at that come. And I
Okay.
think your story was, I told you that this had come about in our research, that an unbelievable amount of our visitors shopped at Tractor Supply. And
Wow.
you were very skeptical about that.
I was.
Until the day a van drove up with the girls that came out with their
Absolutely
you can tell
right.
the rest
I
of
can
that
tell
story.
we see it all the time in Tractor Supply. We work parking lots. Parking lots tell wonderful stories. And I was dead wrong on that. We have a Tractor Supply story in the parking lot.
Yeah, the girls came out in the cowboy hats.
Oh,
I believe, and
absolutely.
you asked them where
Cowboy
they got
boots, jeans. Where'd you get that? Tractor Supply. I want to be kind to our audience. We could talk for days
Sure.
about this. We're passionate about it. Let me summarize and repeat back what I think I've heard you say, and then you'll inevitably correct me and say something better. It sounds like we are seeing gravity, the inevitable forces of gravity, pull some of these visitation numbers, occupancy numbers back down to earth, but they're still on a positive year-over-year trajectory going back pre-pandemic, through the pandemic, and now post-pandemic. And we've got data suggesting 75% of our core market is coming from some known spots, but we're also exploring emerging markets. Have I described that well, in addition to a rebranding effort?
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, to look at our website traffic, we're still seeing increase there.
You're seeing an increase in your website traffic.
Yes, we are. It's just the actual conversion of visitor guides and newsletters, those numbers are down.
So traffic up, conversion down.
Yes, sir.
That's a fascinating dynamic.
Which is probably the same of what you're seeing with bookings, I would imagine.
The analogy I use relative to website traffic, if we had a department store, how many lookers to bookers?
Yep.
How many shoppers to
Right.
credit card runs? And so we watch that, and when I see a hesitation there, we've got a lot of folks shopping, but not a lot of credit cards being run, the story becomes, why are we waiting? What's in the market that is driving that hesitation? We don't know what that is.
That's hard to put. You can't put your finger on it. You can guess all day long.
Yep.
Is it the economy? Is it the election year? Is it this? Is it that? You really don't know. That's why working with partners is so important, because we fortunately do have the ability to pivot especially in our digital advertising. So we can pivot. We also keep aside every year a certain amount of our budget.
Dry powder to
if
adapt.
we need it. And, this year, Alex, we went out to the airports. We're in Dulles Airport. We have a big digital board.
I love that idea.
So we're capturing audiences that we might not have captured before, some coming from our target markets, some maybe not. Bus wraps was in.
Yep.
Yeah, we had bus wraps in the DC, Northern Virginia market.
Absolutely.
We also did Metro Rail placement, and then we also did a couple of digital billboards in the Pittsburgh market.
Awesome.
So, yes, sir. And then on top of that, we also did, this past year, we did a partnership with Brewmate. They're a tumbler and cooler company. And we did some placement alongside with them in the Whole Foods stores. About
Affluent customer.
Yeah, about 20 Whole Foods stores in those key states that we mentioned before. So,
is it fair to say multi-million-dollar annual budget? Am I making that number up, or am I way off base?
You're correct.
Okay, so lots of resources going into identifying new markets and sustaining current ones.
And being very surgically, we like surgical precision in terms of where we're putting our marketing dollars. Because, for a destination of our size, we have a very robust budget. But we also want to be very careful with those dollars to make sure that we're getting the biggest bang for our buck for our residents.
Absolutely.
Because ultimately, the tourism industry provides all the amenities, all the wonderful things that we enjoy as residents. So we want to always be fiscally responsible in our advertising to our residents.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I think that's very important. So yes, we do have a really robust budget. We're very fortunate that way, but we're also very careful.
Perfect.
But we do keep that little pot back just in case we start seeing some of the trends that we're seeing, and how can we work with our partners to amplify the message where we need to go? Like, do we put out digital ads that say book now?
Absolutely.
So we have the ability to do that in those in a targeted way. So that's kind of we're very fortunate in that respect.
Alex, Tameron, I want to thank you both. I know it's a snowy afternoon. We'll leave here and head home and see how many inches of snow we get. We're fortunate to have a partner like you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for sharing our knowledge with us. So often we think we can have this conversation in May, but as we know, the two finest words in the English language, early detection, it's wonderful to have it in January as we begin to assess a market, as it not only includes accommodations, but restaurants, retail, experiential. These are the leading indicators that will support all of that. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching.
Can I just add one more thing?
Yes, if I forgot something, please.
When I say residents, it's not just the people that live here. It's those people who own homes, that rent those homes to vacationers. It's not just who live here.
Woman after my own heart.
I'm responsible to everyone. And without those homeowners that are out there renting their homes, I wouldn't have a job. So I just want to express my appreciation to every resident or every homeowner, and also to our partners.
Well, thank you.
Because without you helping us, we'd just be kind of out there in the water, floundering around, throwing things at the wall, hoping they stick. But that information, that boots on the ground that we get from our business partners really do help us in our marketing efforts. So
thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
no, I'm glad you
very
did.
much.
I'll end with a quote. Sam Walton, the Walmart founder, said for many years that he never had to read a newspaper. He could walk around a store and judge the strength of the economy based on simply what was in people's carts. Mm-hmm. And it's this partnership that allows us to look into a proverbial cart well in advance of a purchase decision to judge the strength of the economy and allocate our resources accordingly. So thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Stay warm. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time.